Okay, so welcome to another episode of Conversations with Kevin. I'm super excited to have this guest on, Mike Campbell. I've been following him for some time, and he's a sort of a no-nonsense men's performance coach. And it comes from for me, one of the reasons I've followed Mike for such a long time is that it comes from a space of almost like it's vulnerability, but there's power at the same time, if that makes sense. And yeah, like I said earlier to you, Mike, off record, I've followed you quite a while. But what I'm really curious about is why men? Why coaching men? And why is this so important to you? Why did you kind of pick this journey up?
Those questions. Where do we go with it, right? And first of all, thanks for having me. And no nonsense. Yeah, I love that, and I clearly resonate with that. I think there's a little smile from me internally and probably externally with that. Okay. So why men? Well, I mean, this might sound like a little bit of a cop out initially, but because I'm a dude, and so not everyone, but my experience, and it is true for me, is that a lot of the men I end up working with, and a lot of the perhaps content that I share is speaking to me or a version of me at some point in my life, right? And also some point that I haven't stepped into, perhaps, and so where that really comes about is very much through my own journey. I had a great upbringing and a wonderful family life, and I didn't have traumatic events and all this kind of stuff objectively, right? But I also had my own experience, and I grew up to be a pretty safe and conservative kid. And also, we moved around a lot. When I was 7, we started moving, and as a safe kid, those were terrifying experiences for me, to be the new kid in the center of attention, and I did not like that one bit, and it was very, very painful. I remember running back to the car, crying to my mum, and that happened a lot over the next few years. And what I really learned from that was that change and upheaval and new things brought painful experiences, loosely. And so I began a childhood and adolescence of being a pretty stubborn kid who resisted new things. And that very much painted a big part of who I was. As a teenager, I was a very talented athlete, a rugby player. I'm from New Zealand, so that was kind of it. And I had this thing that I would be a professional rugby player, I suppose, but maybe I didn't really know the extent of sacrifice that was really required. And I was a safe kid. I clung to security and what I knew, because I developed clearly this unconscious belief that what I didn't know, what was out here, was not nice. And so that became me as a young man into my early 20s, and we mentioned before, into my mid 20s. I travelled and I played rugby, and I moved to Scotland, moved to the UK, and that was the first real big me stepping out of my comfort zone, doing something totally terrifying. I moved to the small town in the middle of Scotland. I didn't know anyone. Yeah. But it became this and the more I reflect on it, man, it became this incredibly poignant part in my life, because it forced me to be alone with myself a lot. It forced me to question the stories that were rampant in my head. As a single guy at 24 years old, I was interested in women, and I found myself terrified of judgment and what other people, including women at that time more specifically, thought of me. And all of this led me to questioning, what's going on here, man? I'm so in my head, and you know what? I think I need to get over myself. I think it was kind of like, Mike, bro, you need to get over yourself. And that became a journey of wanting to understand myself a lot more. And then fast forward that, I was a personal trainer at the time. That's what I got into when I left university. And my natural curiosity is to want to understand things. And working with humans on a physical level, I very soon worked out that my job really was about understanding human behavior. And so I was naturally doing that. I moved back to Australia about 2009. I was about in my late 20s, and that's when I really started to go, what am I doing? What do I do? I work with men physically, but when I remove myself from it, actually what I do is quite a very holistic approach to helping them kind of get their shit together, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And that's when I started to kind of collate what I had found, I suppose. And it was same problems time and time again. Physically, guys weren't where they wanted to be. They wanted something else, more, better, different. And therefore, mentally, they weren't where they wanted to be either, because the two cannot not be linked. And then third thing was, if they want to try and change, if they want to do some work, where do they start? Like, oh my God, there is such a confusing collection of information and options. Where does the average guy start? And that, Kevin, led me, so I know I'm giving you the long answer here, but that is what really led me down the rabbit hole of what is going on with men that we're all in this place, all the conversations I was having, all my friends, all my clients, everyone, and myself. And I started to look at the statistics. I started to look at the let's call it the global picture of men. And that was this dissatisfaction, this kind of accepting just so, and wanting for more and better, and not knowing how to go about it. The next step was statistics around suicide, around mental health, around things like violence, domestic violence, violence against self. And what this started to show me was that men are suffering in silence, and there is something going on with us. And the only conclusion that I could come to, as well as all the reading and research and speaking to experts and so on, I could come to was, we have this idea of what it means to be a man that is not serving us. Yeah. It's so narrow, right? It's like be tough and strong and never show emotion and just sort everything out yourself and be everything to everyone and never falter. And I was like, that's not fucking working. You know what? Yeah. I am here to do something about that, and therefore I must. And so essentially that's kind of why men and how it came about. And, linking to, I think, the second part of that question as well. Does that help?
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. And what I wanted to know, as I was listening to you talking, you said something about, where do you think this ideal came from, the whole society? Is it media? Is it generational? And why is it so hard to break?
Yeah, and I think it's, for one, like it's confusing, and this is one of the other things, is that as men, we like black and white. We want things to be clear and simple and logical and rational. And so all of this is so incredibly nuanced that it requires us to really dig in and go, we can't just box things into simple things. And that's a challenge. That's real hard, right? Yeah. And so the answer to that, I think, is many things. It is biological. The masculine is very much about task, focus, single, narrow focus, result driven, right? Achieve a result, logical, rational, do. And so it is about, being dependable and strong and leading. That is the masculine, which is, of course, in every individual. More men more predominantly have that as a majority, I suppose. And then those are the things that I think have led over the years to the societal aspects that we see.
Sure.
Because, it doesn't take a genius to look back and see that, and also how it's been perpetuated and the ill effect. And one of the things I think is that the ill effect has often been directly seen as the ill effect or ill result to or on women, which it very much has been, but it's also men, right? Like, when we talk about kind of the patriarchy and that like hyper masculinity, which is, I think, very poorly been labeled toxic masculinity. Yeah, it is often that kind of lumping men in there. And it's like, actually, no, you know what? It's a small amount of men who have grabbed power over, and most men have suffered from this as well. So it's so many things, and I think it just comes together. And media, absolutely, it doesn't take 5 seconds. You could turn on a movie or a popular movie or TV show these days, and you will see these archetypal heroes who must be perfect, right? And he's chiseled, and he's strong and stoic and unemotional, and or he's like a fat, useless joke.
Yeah.
And so it's like, are these my choices? So it just gets perpetuated, right? And then you enter in the dialogue and the narrative that we have in our communities, and certainly in the media and society as well. And that is, when boys start to show, not when they start to show, when they get to a point and they are still showing emotion and crying and so on, there is, obviously this isn't a blanket, but I think we can look at a pretty sort of bell curve. There is the messages that come through which are anti that, it's like, don't cry, boys don't cry, harden up, don't be a girl, don't be a pussy, don't be a fag. These things are super real, absolutely right. And they might not be in your household, but they will be around. They'll be in the playground, they'll be in media, they'll be in TV and movies and so on. And so that stuff perpetuates. And what it leads to is a series of all sorts of messages and conditioning coming down to a boy understanding on some level that who he is, because there's this big part of him, which is lots of things, but let's just loosely call it the feminine, the emotional side.
Yeah, the feminine,
is not to be explored, and therefore you can't be part of you. Of course, we're not contextualizing all of that as a kid, but we learn that we need to pretend and play the part of what we think we're supposed to be. And for some people, we'll go heavy into that kind of hyper-masculine, narrow mask, and others will maybe shun it completely and just become a shell of who we really are because we're so, hidden behind that shame, and we just become lost.
Yeah.
Right. And that is, I would say, probably one of the most common words I have heard when I have spoken to men over the years. Yeah. If we sum up all the stuff that's going on and have the feeling, it's like lost and stuck and spinning, and because we've lost ourselves.
Yeah, sure. It's as you, it's funny with some of the feedback we were getting last week was that, there's never, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And again, you mentioned the word shame. They never feel like so they may do that. And there was some super successful dudes and again, physically look great and whatever, but they still feel like that child. And again, it's almost like the imbalance between the masculine and the feminine energies is slightly off. And it has a massive effect on their external relationships and the relationships to women too, but also to other men, because there's that sort of that comparison. And one of the things that we said in our groups is that just leave your ego at the door, because we will, you will get challenged here, and when it comes up, that's okay, but you have to leave that and part of that and just accept what's coming, what you're getting back from your brothers, really.
And also maybe even because I like that and I resonate with it, and just as you're saying that, it comes up to me, it's like maybe the next step is actually not necessarily leave your ego at the door, but like invite it to be curious, because it's the ego that's going to give you that lesson, that thing to pay attention to, right? Like, okay, hold on, my ego wants to do this, what's that telling me?
Yes, yeah.
Right, and if we can communicate with it, there's some lessons in there. But one of the things that you said there, which I think is super important for us to touch on, is they're successful, and that's it right there. It's like, well, what is that? And I think that's what extends beyond what we just spoke about. Is that men and anyone, right? Of course, but when we lump men together, there's this idea of what being a successful man is, and those are the things that are perpetuated, especially to adults, and it's your ability to provide, protect, and procreate. And we measure those in things like our house and our status and our body, and our sexual prowess and our job. And so we say someone's a success, but most of that is on the external. Fundamentally, we're learning to measure our success based on what other people think or our external things, and that's never going to lead us anywhere, I think, meaningful until we connect those things, right? What are those things for in terms of how do I view them and how do I view myself? Because the body, the job, none of that means anything if, essentially if you've abandoned yourself.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, it's funny as you were talking, I just thought actually, I wonder if like the need for greed and more power is linked to that, because it's never enough, and it's funny because the male has built systems, then it's actually the majority of the systems, especially in the Western world. Then that's why we're seeing there's so much conflict, because it's over trying to get one up on someone on something else to have that power, and not even know to what end or for what reason.
Yeah, just more and more and more, right? Like we don't ask that question, how much is enough? Or if we do ask it, perhaps we just go, I don't want to answer it and face the answer. Yeah, absolutely, right? Like we're wanting, and this is super broad, right? And we are throwing a big blanket over this, but the need for things to try and make up for a hole that's in here of me feeling enough. Basically, like there's lots of nuance and different flavors and manifestations of it, but I think we see that a lot. And in some of the work that I do, we talk about like when we're dealing with an individual, like where do we want to take him? What's the result? And there's lots of things you can say, you know, and like confidence. It's like, what is that even? It's a common word that guys talk about, but like for me, it's kind of one, bringing a man to a real understanding of who he is, and being able to like essentially be able to show up in the world as that. And so that's kind of like bringing a man back home to himself. Being comfortable with who you are, being grounded, and knowing what's important to you and why. And all of a sudden we, I think, start to lose the need for all these things external to us to make us feel happy or good enough.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if I'm no longer needing your validation and, you know, some arbitrary amount of money in the bank beyond safety and comfort to make me feel good, all of a sudden it's a different picture, you know?
It's funny because as you said, going back to yourself and working out who you want to be, and I can feel as a collective from the man collective. So a lot of men be like, oh, that feels already feels uncomfortable for them, you know, and it's.
Yeah, bro.
And to
follow that.
Exactly. You can't hide from it. You can't. You can't really. You can't escape it. And that's where the. I suppose that's part of the journey in and of itself, isn't it? Is facing that thing that you are. It's weird because you're almost scared of it, but on the other side of that, there's so much reward, right? How do you go about? Yeah. How do you go about doing that with your guys?
So, Like it differs and it doesn't, you know, there's some fundamentals that I kind of work to. And to start with, so, you know, I have a group coaching program, right? And so obviously every guy is different, but the modules and the things that we work to obviously remain the same essentially. And those are templates basically. So what we have just talked about will be, it will be something early on. Like, okay, this is the kind of thing that's potentially going on that has been a series of messages and conditioning that has led to you being who you are right now and the results in your life. We are clearly having a conversation because something isn't either working, feeling good, or you're wanting something else or more. So how, amongst all of the messaging that you've received, have you lost sight of who you are? Because that question, who are you, that is paramount, and it's the first thing that fundamentally that I ask. It's the name of the first module in my coaching program. I've asked it at many workshops and events and presentations. And, you know, and I'm sure you're aware of this too, but like that, on the surface, it seems like a simple question. But, you know, I have stumped many guys with that question because it's very challenging and confronting. And so we must ask ourselves, like, if we remove ourselves from a moment, why would that be challenging? And it would only be challenging because we've kind of lost that a bit, right? And we feel the need to, we're afraid of what people might think of the answer. Like, we're terrified of how people think of us, right? That's the whole reason that we put on the mask of something else. So what I want to do is go, a lot of this stuff might have contributed to you losing kind of a bit of sight of who you are. So once we understand a little bit of that intellectually, we can kind of park it and go, great. So now here's permission, right? And I see one of my fundamental roles is giving them permission to give themselves permission, let's face it, to go, okay, cool, I'm going to face my shit, what you said before, right? I'm going to look, I'm going to dig.
Yeah.
And when we start digging, that's what we're looking for. Who are you when we take off the mask? You know, if you really knew me, you would know that I am fill in the blank, or you would know that I am not fill in the blank, right? And we start to get some things. So we just, you know, in a broad essence, we start to dig into understanding who you are a bit. And what I really want guys to shift to, and therefore what I want to facilitate them in, is what is driving your behaviors from a place of fear and avoiding pain, or more accurately, avoiding perceived potential future pain, because it's genuinely not real at all, right? It's the fear wrapped up in some old pain that we've experienced, like I shared with myself before, being afraid of being the new kid at school, right? That experience wasn't going to happen again, but in my head, I'd created a story that I had. And then what is going to drive you towards purpose and pleasure, right? We are fundamentally wanting to figure out what pulls your strings or what is going to, because that's why you have the results in your life. Why you act in the way that you do come from the stories that you tell yourself and the beliefs that you have about yourself, others, and the world around you. And so all of that really is awareness. It's research into ourselves. You know, we start to get answers and it's like, that's interesting. Let me dig into that. And I think with that awareness, we can start to take action in different ways. And that has to be, you know, very much a cycle, right? Awareness, action.
Sure.
But it's all about discovering more, not necessarily discovering more about who you are, but it's kind of like shedding all the crap that we've brought in. Then you actually emerge, let's call it.
Yeah, of course. And I suppose within that practice as well, there is, and I call it a practice because you've got to fail numerous times at being the old self rather than the new. I mean, well, how long, I can't say how long will it take to make that transition because everyone's different, but what are the sort of the typical pitfalls and that you see with your clients?
Yeah, so I mean, like look, this is very common. Guys are super hard on themselves, right? And so what happens is we tend to set really high expectations because we feel like we should be capable of these things, and we aren't. And so then we beat ourselves up for not reaching it. But then again, it just becomes that cycle, right? So that cycle of self-judgment, I think, is a spin that we get into that often prevents us even looking at it, right? We just let that, it's like, I'm the only one experiencing this. So one of the pitfalls that I see is that guys aren't willing to face and own up to some of the stuff and be honest with themselves, to do anything about it, right? Because we realize, we automatically think at that point, if we get there, a lot of us, I need to have the answers to this.
Yeah, sure.
Like, no, you don't. If you don't have the answers, then you don't have the answers, right? But if we're in that state, we just perpetuate it. No, but I should, and I'm the only one experiencing it. So one of the things for a lot of guys is never getting going because we stay stuck in that spin. Then, like, all of this really comes down to the stories that we are telling ourselves. And so I think one of the big pitfalls is that guys, if guys don't progress, perhaps, is that there's clinging to those stories so hard. You know, and the story is a very broad topic, idea, let's say, but you know, there's lots of things, right? Like, I'm not good enough, that's a story, right? You know, but then there's also stories like, I can't do X, or that's not for me, or this is my lot in life, or it's lucky for some. It's like, all the stories will potentially stop you taking action because even though they probably have you in a place that's not ideal or, you know, maybe fucking annoying, there's this weird twisted comfort in them because it's the devil we know. Sure. And so that's, I think, one of the big pitfalls is that we stick to the devil we know because the devil we know, we don't, i.e. the unknown, terrified of the unknown. So I'll stick with what I know even though it might not be that pleasant. You know, so therefore the fear of the unknown, which is in essence that little terrified little boy in you who's clinging to safety, going no, right? And so the pitfall is answering to him all the time, letting him dictate your life instead of going, you know what, I don't know what's going to come on the other side of there, but I'm willing to take that step. And therefore that risk. Yeah, that's, oh man, that's so true. That is so true. There's obviously lots in all of that, right? Yeah. Those are things, right? And I tell you what, man, and I'm sure you've had this too, the amount of times I talk to a guy and he'll say something that equates to those kinds of things, right? But it's got his own, you know, life around it. Yeah. And then he'll say something like, man, you know, I don't know if that makes any sense, or, you know, this seems, and it's like, you don't even know how much sense you're making. Yeah. Because it's every dude, it just takes on a slightly different, you know, flavor. And I think that's part of the problem. Again, we don't talk about this shit. And if we did, we'd realize, oh my Lord, all these dudes have got the same shit going on as me.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is, okay, maybe I could do something about it if I didn't feel so terrified of being judged for talking about it. If we just all start, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
We're all just sitting like half a step away, right?
Amazing. What are there any other commonalities that you're aware of, or that you've noticed?
Where do I begin? I think there are a lot. You know?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I suppose in essence we've talked about a few there. You know, the commonalities that you know, something like I'm the only one experiencing this. You know, to talk about this perhaps or seek any help would be weak. You know, I need to be able to sort this out myself. Those kinds of stories. And where I think a lot of this drills down into is the common fear of judgment. Yeah. And that is universal for humans, but I think for men and women it takes on different avenues and results. But, you know, and this might not be a conscious thought for a lot of men, but it's somewhere in there, is essentially being judged as not man enough. Right? Because when we say not enough, that's potentially a word that we just haven't inserted in there.
Sure.
But, you know, if I were to speak to my father or my boss or whatever and say, you know what, I don't think I can handle this. I feel like I'm drowning at the moment. Like, what is preventing me from saying that? From the fear that I don't have it together. People will think I don't have it together, that I'm not good enough at what I do, that I actually have felt I'm an imposter all the time and it's going to come real. Like, it's still all the fear of judgment. And a lot of that is attached to our identity as a man, that I can't provide and that I don't have the answers and I'm not dependable and all these things. So for me, that's kind of one of the main commonalities. We are preventing ourselves showing up as ourselves, living our lives in full expression, and therefore, like, living a life that's meaningful and purposeful. Caveat, that doesn't mean it's free of challenges.
No. Yes.
Is because we're terrified of what other people think.
Okay.
That how we will be judged. And that might be judged as less of a man, or insert your own bloody story in there, but either way, it's playing out for so many of us.
Yeah. So on the flip side of that, then, what's the when you do show up fully and you're practicing this work and you're catching yourself and you're living from out of, for want of another word, love for yourself rather than fear, what's the payoff for that? Just in case for some guys watching this thinking, I'm still not going to go there then.
Whatever. Yeah, and look, honestly, so even further back to when you said, you know, and when I said the question, who am I? And you said some guys might be going, okay, well, other guys might be going, what?
Yeah, true. Yeah,
what does that even? I know who I am. I'm me, you know, and it's like, okay, that's a valid point, right? But there's questions that we can ask that will probably show that up pretty quick. Having said that, you also might not be, you know, like, quote unquote ready to hear that right now, and that's fine. Okay, cool, man. You know, like if your life is amazing and you feel awesome, and you can openly show up in your relationships, you know, and be yourself, go for it. Now, what's the other side of this? I would say, because at the same time, I would say, you know, like loving yourself is one of those. For those listening, I did like quote marks there. It's one of those terms that's quite popular, but I think for a lot of everyday guys is also like, it's hard to grasp. It's like, what is that? Right? It's self-love. So even though if you ask them if they, you know, if they are hard on themselves, they'll say, yes, I am. It's like, there's a disconnect there. Yeah. So the thing that I like to use that I think more men connect with is like accepting yourself. Right? Accepting all your flaws and the shit that you're hard on yourself about that you fear people will judge you for. Accept yourself. It's fine, man. We've all got shit. I think that's easier to grasp. So therefore, the other side is all these things, which I would boil down to this: feeling at peace. That.
Yeah.
Like, that would be the most common thing that I think a lot of guys end up coming to when we talk to them about it and we really start to flush this stuff out. It might sound like lots of things. It might be many other synonyms and confusing sentences. But it's something like that. They talk about confidence, right? That's a byproduct. It really boils down to feeling at peace with who you are, and therefore being grounded and more certain. And so I was speaking about this with some of my guys the other day. I can't remember the context of the conversation, but it was around this kind of stuff. It was around certainty and self-trust, because I think all of this stuff kind of links to self-trust, fear of the unknown and stuff. And I said, look, here's the thing. If tomorrow all of the guys in my coaching community went, Mike, we're out. And if my wife decided to leave me, and I don't know, any number of other things, let's say, there would be devastation and sadness and grief, potentially anger and many other emotions. But also, fundamentally, I know within myself, I'll be okay. Because, one, I've faced all my shit, and two, I'm at peace, I'm grounded. I know that at the end of the day, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Those things will affect me, but they won't ruin me. Absolutely, they'll affect me. I'll be devastated. I'll be a wreck. Right, but my life wouldn't be over, because my life, how I feel about myself, isn't dependent on all those things.
Sure.
Right, and so I think maybe that's another word that we could use in there, is dependability, right? And I know I can depend on myself. Not all the time. Other times I have to depend on others, but as a baseline. So that's the kind of thing that I would say as a common other side of that coin, which might look and feel many different ways to many different guys.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that's deep. I love that. Okay, so
actually, to extend upon that, quickly, Kevin, because the peace thing also speaks to how many guys that you speak to are like up in their heads and overthinking and overanalyzing and doing everything for everyone and taking on things, and it's like, oh my god, and especially when you got kids and responsibilities and peace is also like, some fucking peace.
Yeah.
But this is one of the other things that I find is that some of those guys, therefore, they want peace, they want space in their life, freedom, you might call it. But when space and time come, we fill it. We pull our phone out when we're waiting for the train, this kind of shit, right? And it's like, so that's something that needs inquiry. If you want these things, but they come and you fill it, what's going on there? And that's because a lot of us struggle to spend time with ourselves, because then we would have to face ourselves.
Yeah, so true. So true.
But it's available. Available.
Yeah. Especially that one. I think that one, peace, is I'm sure that resonates with a lot of men as well, women too, but men in particular. That peace thing is, and how to even get it is a major key.
Yeah, because you said before, like how you started to say, how quickly or something like that, right? And it is a valid question, I think. But of course, the answer is like, it depends. Yeah. But I will say this: it can be relatively easy, right? But probably not by yourself. If you have the right tools and resources and support and people around you and guidance, those shifts can be relatively easy. And let's look at it as an analogy of like losing weight or something. Someone might be like quite overweight and it's taken them 30 years to get to that point. If they want to lose it in 3 months, it's like, check your expectations.
Sure.
It's not going to take 30 years, but it's going to be more than 3 months, right? And so this stuff doesn't have to take that long in the big scheme of your life. And if you're an adult now over 30, think about how quickly a year goes by. Like, man, a year races by.
Yeah.
So, if you really want to make these changes, you can do a hell of a lot in a year and it won't feel that long.
True. No, that's very true. Again, that's part of the acceptance as well, isn't it? And lessening the expectations so you don't set yourself up to fail.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, those expectations, right? They'll get you.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the pieces I can't remember it verbatim, but one of the pieces that drew me to your work initially was some time ago, and it was something about the nice guy.
Yes.
The nice guy, and how actually it's a form of manipulation. I was like, oh my God, this is so true. And it resonated with me because that was me. I was the nice guy and put everyone else's feet for, yeah. So I wondered if you could talk on that a bit and just, you know, I can't remember the post. I wish I could find it. But,
there's a few of them, so I don't blame you. Look, and you're bang on it. And you know, so I will end up working with, you know, let's call it, quote unquote, a few types of men, right? But types is really just the stuff that manifests on the surface, and nice guys is one of them. And I spoke before about we want things to be black and white. This is nuanced, right? Because no, you know, being nice does not, and as we get into it, does not mean everything all the time, right? But the nice guy that we're talking about is that dude, he knows this. He knows that he's a nice guy. He puts himself last. He says yes to everything. Right, to everyone else. He's always helping others. He has no boundaries. He avoids conflict, plays peacekeeper all the time. He sweeps things under the rug. Right? And therefore he's busy. He always feels exhausted. He's always giving to others. And so you might say, wow, what a selfless guy. Give him a medal. But what we have to look at here is the intention. And often for nice guys like this, first of all, I'll say, a good chunk of the time, I bet you they are just being nice because they're good dudes, right? So we're not saying you're a piece of shit. But a lot of the time, their motivation, be it super conscious or not, is so that people see you as the good, nice guy. So that they like you, so that you get their approval. And that is a subtle form of manipulation. Essentially, it's me being nice to you, Kevin, so I have therefore written what we call a covert contract that you don't know about. That's hence the term covert. I do this so that you like me in return, or something to that effect, right? And so that's manipulation. That's not nice. And what it's speaking to is fundamentally a belief that you are not good enough, or something around that, right? And so I don't really accept or like myself enough, and so I need to do these things so that you give it to me. You like me, you give me validation, thank you for being so nice, Mike. He's such a nice guy. That the idea intellectually is that will make me feel good about myself. But if I don't already feel it myself, that won't do the job. Sure. It's a Band-Aid. Yeah. And so if I don't believe it, I won't believe it from you. And so it's a never-ending cycle. I'll need more. I'll start to resent you if you don't appreciate me and give me approval and like me, right? And this happens to guys in their relationships all the time. They squash conflict. They play peacekeeper. They're nice, and it's not acknowledged or appreciated. And they start to build resentment. Yeah, that's not nice, right? And so it becomes this cycle that plays out. And the thing is, to anyone who resonates with this, I feel you, man. Just as Kevin said, I've been there too, right? I'm a recovering nice guy. And there's many aspects to it, but the fundamental answer is this. All of that responsibility of feeling okay about yourself is on you. You cannot keep handing this over to others. You certainly can't do it secretly in that subtle form of manipulation, because being manipulated doesn't feel nice, does it? No. So you've got to use some empathy there, right? But the responsibility lies on you to take care of that. Now, that's easier said than done. As we said before, you can do this stuff, but the first part is the confrontation of being honest enough with yourself to go, holy shit, I do that. And the good news is, man, there's plenty of, simple but also sometimes confronting work that you can do to move past that. But the point I want to make is this: if you're doing that, it doesn't eventually get there. No. Right? Yeah, sure. Because it's like pouring into a sieve, I think a sieve is a sieve in the UK, right? Yeah, that's right, yeah. Right, you pour flour into a sieve and it might hold for a moment and then it empties. Yeah. And that's it. Yeah, you don't get what you want anyway. It's a hit. It's like, Tap me in, give me that hit of approval and validation, and then it goes, and I need more.
Yeah.
And the other thing with nice guys is we and I say we because I'm recovering, right? Struggle to receive.
Mm.
So here's a simple way that you can measure this. If someone gives you a compliment, what do?
Mm.
Do you get awkward? Do you squash it? Do you deflect it? Do you feel like you need to give one back? Because the other thing that nice guys will do is they'll keep a tally almost of, you know, I do this, you do that. And you doing that might be just the approval thing, right? And so it happens with compliments. Oh, you've Kevin complimented me. You know what, man? You're looking good too. You know, you feel like you have to give it back. To me, compliments are like a beautiful way to show how you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
And so because a nice guy doesn't believe it himself, he can't receive it.
Mm.
Whereas if you compliment me, I can go, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Simple.
Just take it. Yeah.
But when I reject that, I'm actually disrespecting you as well as myself.
Sure.
So it's a big subject, right? And I think a lot of guys do fall in there. And I want to stress again that doesn't mean because we love to be black and white. Sometimes you just got to hit us over the head with this shit. It doesn't mean that you are like that all the time. A lot of nice guys would be genuinely nice, good dudes for the most part. But there's this element that is needing approval, and they do that. They seek that via their actions, and that's not nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's true, and again, it's in the practice, isn't it? You're going to need to catch yourself. You're not going to get it right all the time, or kind of slip up. It's funny when you say that with the compliments as well. I remember doing that. I haven't done it for a while either. And someone said something, and I was like, it's almost like I'm disagreeing with their compliment. Like, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah, but also let's not forget, like we live in interesting countries, right? Britain, Australia, New Zealand, and we have this thing called the tall poppy, you know, and the kind of, you know, stiff British upper lip, all that kind of stuff that says don't be too big for your boots, you know, and all that kind of thing, which it's like a cloud in the weather, like it's just kind of the air. It's always threatening, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of the messaging that we receive, and that can add to us feeling that way about ourselves. So you get a compliment, it's like, you know, it's almost the American arrogant way, let's call it, to say thanks, man.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, we could learn a lot from them in that sense, right? But again, when we talk about black or white, that doesn't mean that you go fully fledged to being like a selfish, self-involved, you know, egotistical prick. It's simply receiving a compliment when someone gives you one.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's true. Right. Thank you, Mike. Right. So the last one was, this was quite interesting because I've not seen this, and I thought, this is actually a stroke of genius. And this is one of your, yeah. Yeah. So this is one of your programs, and it was talking about the bulletproof body. Like you say, you used to be a personal trainer, modeled a bit, and you say, look, I can give you this program for free, but you won't do it. I'm willing to bet you that you won't do it. In fact, and then you can have this for free, or I can give you the reason for $10. I'll give you the reasons why you won't do it. For me, that got my mind. I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Because I'm wondering I'm wondering what the results of that are. What are the metrics of that? And what made you come up with that idea anyway? In the first place,
So, so look, that's it, right? I was a personal trainer for 12 years and you know, before I really transitioned into being a coach in this format. And for a time, you know, to speak to my own shit, for a time, I almost kind of rejected that side of me because it was like, I didn't want to be known as, you know, Mike the personal trainer, because there is a lot more to me, a lot more depth and massively to what we do. But I recognize that that's where a lot of men are. You know, a lot of men won't give themselves permission to do this kind of personal development work, you know, and like fundamentally what I see myself, Kevin, is I make personal development like understandable, accessible, and applicable for everyday men. Because a lot of it's woo-woo theory, it's too hard to grasp. But a lot of us don't give ourselves permission to do this. Where we might get to is, I'm going to work myself physically. And why do we do that? Well, because we see it and we put a lot of our worthiness into our body and our looks and how other people view us. So, you the work that I do is, nice guys. That's a simple thing. You can kind of put in a box and tie a ribbon on it and make a package out of it and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the stuff is always still questions like, how do we communicate with men? And someone in my team who helps me with some marketing stuff is like, you know what, man, the physical stuff is always there. Dudes are always seeking it. And so maybe that is one of those elements of like meeting them where they're at. You have all these expertise. Like, just because you don't do it anymore doesn't mean you need to ignore those expertise.
True.
He was like, what if we package that up in a way? So this was, coming from him, which is the beauty of having people around you.
Mm.
What if we package that up in a way and we offer it to them and say, you can have this, right? Because what I was talking to him about was people don't do it. I spent most of my time as a personal trainer trying to understand behavior, because it was like, even the clients that were paying me a lot of money, and they might come to my sessions, but they didn't do any of the stuff out of the session. Mm. It's like, why wouldn't you fucking do that? Yeah. I don't understand it. And the more and more I had to understand it, and that's what led me to scratching the itch and moving beyond personal training, was there's an emotional need here. Why am I wanting to do the physical work? Right, that's what we have to address. And so the question becomes, we, especially as men, we want the strategies, right? So like I see, and it could be physical, but it could be anything in my life. I see these ideals and these things that I want to aspire to. Successful person, all those things that we spoke about before. I want those. So I go seeking the strategies to get me there. It's like the 10 best morning routines of millionaires, or the, time management strategy. It's all good and effective, but it's all masturbation if it's on a flimsy foundation. And by that I mean, if I have a belief system that doesn't align with me actually applying the strategy, it's not going to work. And this is what happens for most people in the world of the physical. It's a simple, but I think fairly accurate assumption to make, that most people want to be in, let's call it, good physical shape, right? To be broad about it. Everyone knows what to do, right? Let's call it the 80% and the 20%. Yeah. The 80% is limit the amount of crap you eat, limit the overall amount, right? Eat less than you exercise, etc. Eat plenty of vegetables, simple basics, without getting into all the specifics. You know the basics. Move your body regularly, like exercise. Get plenty of sleep. Broadly now we know things about limit the amount of stress. Those are the broad things. Those work when you do them consistently. Yeah. So if everyone wants what they bring you, why the fuck don't they do them?
Yeah.
Right? And the answer is because of some belief they have about themselves that won't allow them to apply it. I don't deserve what it will bring for me. If I put myself out there and I'm quote unquote successful, then I'm putting myself to be out there to be pulled down. All those are the things that we have to tap into. Those are the things that will prevent you applying the strategy. And so my challenge was this. Here is the best nutrition, like essentially nutrition and movement plan that I have ever put together from 12 years of experience. I'm going to give it to you for free, but I believe you won't do it. And I know why you won't do it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I would love to be proved wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
And some people will, because they'll be like, fuck you, dude. That becomes their motivation.
Yeah.
So this is two parts of it. One, so, in the personal development world and in the business world, people like to talk about the why, right? Simon Sinek, very famous, start with why and then know your why. So a lot of people don't know that. The why, let's say in this physical sense, is, to lose 2 stone or to get abs or something like that, right? To feel better about myself. They might go to something like feel confident. That's not it. There's something deeper. It might be feeling at peace with ourselves so I can approach women. I want to find a partner. I want love. Oh, now we're getting to it. A lot of guys don't allow themselves to admit that shit, especially when it comes to working on the physical. We've got to get to that depth, brother, or we're not getting there. Yeah. So we have to figure out the why, but this is the other thing that points to everything with the Bulletproof Body is we have to also work out the why not. And those beliefs that you hold about yourself, they're the why not. You might know where you want to go, but you got to figure out what chains are locking you to the ground, because otherwise you're not going to move towards the why.
Sure.
And so that is essentially why I came up with the Bulletproof Body. And it was like, you can have that shit, but I don't think you do it, brother, because you don't know why you want it, and you don't know why you haven't done it in the past.
Yeah.
Awesome
value. So for $10, I suggest that you you get that book and forget about the free one. Yeah.
And look, so then you can look at the metrics and stuff, and I can tell you this right now, that the number of men that have downloaded the program, let's follow up emails and all that kind of stuff to engage. And it's like, prove me wrong, man. Tell me that you've done it. I would absolutely love more than nothing to have, if I had 1 million guys download that and email me and say, look, I did the program, fuck you, Mike. I'll be like, how fucking cool is that?
Yeah.
Guess what? Not doing it.
No.
And so it's like this twisted thing where I'm like, I'm right, fuck it.
And how many people have go down the other route? Do you see some good numbers on that?
They could be better, but there's enough. But again, like, it's all, this is marketing and messaging, right? It's like what's going to work, because this is one of the things, and you said it at the start, when you described me, and I use the term loving straight talk, right? It's like, I feel that I walk a balance beam of, because I am not about shaming men, and I think that will never work.
No.
But I feel like sometimes it is and I get caught on that sometimes. It can be a fine line to challenge men and call them to face their shit. And for a lot of guys are like, oh man, I needed to hear that. And a lot of guys, and the other ones will never know because they turned away. Are like, fuck that. So that's one of those things that is, for me, that's one of the things I struggle with. That's a work in progress, right? Like, how do you walk that line? Because it's a challenge to go to walk that, and sometimes I might get too strong in it, let's say, if I can reflect objectively, and sometimes maybe I'm not. It's like, you know what, these guys need to hear a little bit more, and that is in essence what that Bulletproof Body call is about, right? Like, I don't think you're going to do it, bro, basically. So, we have good numbers come through there, but I think for a lot of guys, it's kind of like, I think I'll just download it and give it a go. And so, maybe it's not strong enough, right? But that's the point in that. But there's always room to improve these things, and that's what you got to do, right? It's test and measure.
Yeah. For me, I was thinking, maybe just download both.
Absolutely.
That's what.
Absolutely. So look, I'll take you through one of the best successes of the Bulletproof Body. Because my coaching program, the School of Personal Mastery, that is that's the big daddy. That's where all the magic happens. That's a group program. You got to come into a community of men who are in the shit together, right? Once we realize that we're not alone and that there's men in our corner who can support us and hold us accountable and call us on our shit, it becomes so much easier, man, and it feels so much better. But for me, like, fundamentally, that's where it's pointing. If a guy's like, okay, all right, Mike, I call you, I'm going to pay the $10, as you said, and I want to watch the video to find out why I don't do it. That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. And then, depending on the guy, the opportunity might be to actually talk about taking that next level into the School of Personal Mastery, because, like, essentially, that's where we do the work to find out the why and the why not, in simple terms. So just recently, I had a guy, like 2 weeks ago, I had a guy graduate from my program. And he came into that program via the Bulletproof Body. Right? There's been a few of those guys. And so when we first spoke, he was very much focused on the physical. It was all about the body. And of course, that's where he was at that time. And I'm not saying, nah, man, it's not that. But we're obviously having a conversation to elicit what's going on for him. And I've got all the tools and I don't apply them. And it's like, why not? But that's the point that we need to get to. And so we had this great conversation. We had a couple of conversations, and we realized, that of course he's got the tools. Exactly. Why aren't you applying them, and so on? And in the end, he chose to come into my coaching program, as many guys do, but potentially for different reasons. Anyway, for him, the initial premise was the bulletproof body, aka I want to change myself physically. Then he gets into the work, and we start digging into all the why nots. We start digging into all the beliefs that he has about himself. And this is all these stories, man, that keep him small, why he's hiding in his life, why he's terrified of judgment and showing up and all this stuff, which has nothing to do with his body. But his relationship to his body is how it manifests.
Sure.
And so this is a 5.5 month program. Skip forward to the final 2 weeks, final 4 weeks of the program. And he, he's been kind of training and stuff in there, but all of a sudden, he's done the real work. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to turn to the bulletproof body now. And he pulls out the actual download and he starts training, and he's like, man, it's just connected. All of this is just connected. And I am so into this program right now because, this is loose stuff, but because he deserves it and he knows it.
Yeah.
Because he's let go of all the old shit that he was hanging on to around his body and around his identity and worthiness. He's connected his health and the value for his health to his major value, which is contribution and helping people. Right? He's only as good to those people as his health will dictate. And he is absolutely pumped about, loosely looking after himself, right? The avenue is the bulletproof body, but fundamentally, he has now created in the space of, a few weeks, but actually a few months, a lifelong habit and connection to his health, and as a result, what his body looks like.
Sure. Yeah.
Because he's done the real work, and so for me, that's the whole point in the bigger scheme of it. But that doesn't need to be the bulletproof body. It doesn't need to be the School of Personal Mastery. What it is if you are chasing something physically, you have to ask yourself why. What's the point in it? Right? And what's that actually going to mean to you? And when you start to figure out all of that foundational stuff, then you can build the house on top.
Sure. But yeah, that's perfect. Otherwise, you're just going to be stuck with that oscillation. You might get it for a little while, and then your old self will drag you back. Or
you might be that dude who's jacked and he's in great shape or something, but he's miserable.
Yeah,
he's been chasing his sense of self-worth and basically his muscles.
Yeah, sure.
And I've been in that world. You said it very briefly before. I've done a little bit of modeling of a sort, and been on some magazines and stuff like that. And it's an interesting world to get into. And for me, it was never about that, because I'd done the work on myself, let's call it then. The reason I chose to do that was to prove that I walk my talk. And so that was more about my integrity than anything else.
Sure.
But it's an interesting world to be in, because there's a lot of insecure people chasing their worth through their body. And man, that doesn't end well.
Yeah.
But it's a dangerous little thing.
Yeah.
To get into, right?
Cool.
Because it can become a little community and thing that feeds itself,
Yeah. Sure. Wow, I knew this would be. I knew this would be a good talk. I knew it. Oh man! So I got one more question for you, and then
go for it.
So, what does living full or living fully mean to you?
To me, it means to live fully as yourself. And so essentially, it's like full expression. Who the fuck are you? Please show me that. And one of the things that I ask the guys in my program, we talk about what are your quirks and your weird little things. Often they're the things that we have hidden the most, or we only allow maybe our partner, the people who know us the most, to see. But there's often this misconception that it needs to be some weird zany thing. It's what we're really talking about is we just want to see the full breadth of who you are, and often it's hidden in those funny little things that you like that no one else does or whatever. Those are the things that we often fear the judgment around the most are generally going to be the things that, for me, mean you're living fully.
Mm.
Those are probably the things that will endear you to the people who are your people.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
And so living fully means freedom. It means peace, as we said before. And it means finding that balance between, because it's popular now to kind of like, not give a fuck and no fucks given and all that stuff, which might be the opposite of, fearing what other people think and judgment, like we said before, but actually often it's being seen as not giving a fuck. So like, it's still about how people see you. So I think living fully is also finding that balance and knowing whose opinion matters to you and allowing them to matter.
Yeah.
So who your people are as well, and therefore you can feel safe living fully.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Nice, thank you. So I just wanted to quickly acknowledge you and for all the work you're doing. And again, you kind of inspired. I love how this work is, and I love how open you are. And anytime I post something in you're straight back. If I ask a question of you, you reply. And it's nice to be around people that do that. So there's no ego. I've seen you do joint ventures with other people, and it's very much about, of course. Interesting enough, it's an extension of you, but it's beyond the self. You're helping many, many people exponentially, which is fantastic. So I just wanted to acknowledge you for that, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing. And you're relentless with your posts. It's just like, wow. As someone in this field as well, I'm like, God damn, this guy is just like, just on it. So I love that. I love seeing that. He's just really prolific and always on point. It's never wishy-washy. So yeah, thank you very much for that, Mike.
Look, you are incredibly welcome. It is an absolute honor, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. So thank you so much. It's wonderful to hear that stuff. I never look past that. It's, as you know, right, when you're posting things and all that stuff, sometimes it's kind of like hard work. Sometimes it's like, is this even going to have any effect? So it's beautiful to hear that stuff, and thank you so much. And yeah, I'll, as reference to what we said earlier, I'll very gladly receive that.
Yeah, good. And just lastly, so where can people find you? Where can they get a hold of you? And
yeah, so as you kind of pointed out, Instagram is where I do a lot of my posting posting content at the moment. So Mike Campbell MC, you can find me there. Otherwise, straight to my website, you can kind of connect, mikecampbell.com.au. And as you said, Kevin, I love interacting with people. I give a shit about this work and about supporting people and affecting change. So I'm always open to, flick me an email if you want, or into my DMs on Instagram. Go for it. Start the conversation, and you never know what will come.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me, Kevin.